As a child, he believed the camp to be a magical oasis where mythical dinosaurs prowled the woods at night. A native of Los Angeles, he marveled at the flying exotica of dragonflies, the treasures of rural life, and that the first winter, the pure magic of snow. George Takei spent ages 5 to almost 9, imprisoned by the U.S. government in Japanese American internment camps. A relentless optimist, he believed the shameful legacy of incarcerating an estimate of 120,000 Americans during World War II would never be forgotten or duplicated. At age 82, Takei came to understand that he may be mistaken on both counts. Stories fell into the sinkhole of history, given the omission of the camps from many textbooks and the shame felt by former intermentees, many of whom remain silent about their experience, even the descendants. Decay takes no refuge in silence. The Star Trek actor has lived long enough to see thousands of immigrant children jailed near the border. On Twitter, to hit near the border. On Twitter, to his 2.9 million followers, he wrote, "This nation has a long and tragic history of separating children from their parents ever since the days of slavery. Sitting in his Manhattan Penitentiary near Carnegie Hall, the activist for gay rights and social justice calls his government's actions an endless cycle of inhumanity, cruelty, and injustice repeated generation after generation, and says it's got to stop." Takei was fortunate. Was fortunate. He and his two younger siblings were never separated from their parents, who bore the brunt of fear and degradation in the swamps of Arkansas and the high desert of Northern California. They shielded their children, creating a life is beautiful experience, often filled with wonder. Often fills with wonder. His father told him they were going for a long vacation in the country. Their first stop, of all places, was Santa Anita Racetrack, where the family was assigned to sleep in the stalls. "We get to sleep where Horsey slept. Fun," he thought. Taki had little understanding of his family abandoning their belongings, the government questioning their patriotism, their return to Los Angeles with nothing, starting over on Skid Row. As a teenager, he came to understand the toll. "The resonance of my childhood in prison is so loud," says the actor, who still lives in LA. This summer, Taki is accelerating his mission to make Americans remember. Almost 3/4 of a century after his release, he feels the crush of time. "I have to tell this story before there's no one left to tell it," he said. He has a new graphic memory they called Us the Enemy, intended to reach all generations, but especially by the young, by the publisher of the best-selling March trilogy by Republic John Lewis, Democrat person in Georgia. In August, Taki appears in AMC's 10 episode, The Terror Infamy, a horror saga partially set in an internment camp. 4 years later, he starred in Broadway musical Allegiance, inspired by his own personal history. "That experience in the camps gave me my identity," he says in the apartment he shares with his husband Brad, which is decorated with Japanese ink drawings and Star Trek bric-a-brac. A Starship Enterprise phone, a Sulu action figure, and a bonsai tree. It's possible for those years in camps subconsciously nudged Takei was toward acting. "To me, the theater was life. Its artists, the chroniclers of human history," he writes in his 1994 autobiography, To the Stars. He would star as Hakiru Sulu in a short-lived sci-fi series that would improbably spawned more movie and television iterations than furry tribbles. In turn, that success created a springboard for social activism. He became a social media megapower. His website's phrasing as he has 10 million followers, each on two Facebook pages fueled by six, six family members influence her agency, which he calls Team Takei. That influence to a doing and ever expanding audience might ensure his experience in that camps matters. Takei frequently refers to his life as an American story. It is also a singular and probable one. Who else enjoys continued success through the curious alchemy of Star Trek? Coming out at age 68 and regular appearance on the Howard Stern Show. George is a little outrageous and a little Mr. Rogers. He's sort of where they meet in the middle, says filmmaker Jennifer Crute, who produced the 2014 documentary To Be Takei. After enrolling as an architecture student at the University of California at Berkeley, Takei transferred to UCLA to pursue acting at a time when there was almost no work for Asian Americans except dubbing Japanese monster movies like Rodan into English and portraying crass characters in the Jerry Lewis vehicles, The Big Mouth, 1967, and Which Way to Front, 1970. Takei accepted the jobs, the Lewis ones, to his everlasting chagrin. I don't know what that means. Okay. I shouldn't have done it, but he learned. Never again. Fortunately, he landed Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry's utopian version of space pioneers from varied backgrounds working together in harmony and oddly corrupt slacks 2 decades after World War II. It showed an Asian American in a positive role. Jay Coe, who co-wrote Island Allegiance, grew up in a household where television was largely forbidden. Not Star Trek, because Chinese American parents knew we needed to see ourselves represented. We were invisible. George was the only Asian sex symbol. That shirtless sword scene was groundbreaking. He says of the scene in which Sulu believes he's an 18th century swashbuckler. After the crew is infected by a virus, the Starship Enterprise was tasked with a 5-year mission. 5, the original Star Trek. The mothership of Trekiana didn't make it past 3, running for just 79 episodes. The final show aired a half-century ago this year. Takei felt blessed to land the role of the master helmsman when the show was canceled. I knew it would be. Good shows were always getting canceled. Takei was despondent that he would never work again. Space became the eternal frontier. 6 movies with the original cast and an animated series. Those early 6 movies with the original cast and an animated series. Those early TV contractors didn't favor actors. Takei residuals stopped after the 10th rerun, which happened, Takei says, about 10,000 reruns ago. Fortunately, what the network taketh away, the Trekkies giveth. Takei jumped on the convention train across the United States, Canada, Britain, Germany, and Japan, signing autographs and posing and posing for photo ops up to 8 hours. His lustrous baritone growing hoarse. Star Trek has been enormously bountiful to us, Takei says. We had no idea that this phenomenon of Star Trek conventions would follow. Now Takei is one of only four original cast members still alive, along with William Shatner, Captain James T. Kirk, Nichelle Nichols, and Walter Koenig. His professional life flourished, riding the wave of nostalgia and outsized fandom. His personal life, particularly for someone who has always been political and outspoken, was more complicated. Friends and associates long knew Takei was gay. He met Brad Altman, then a journalist, through a gay running club. They started dating in 1987. Brad took George's last name in 2011. Takei worried that the coming out publicly would deep six his acting career, so he waited an eternity. 3.5 decades. An eternity. 3.5 decades. The government imprisoned me for 4 years for my race. I imprisoned myself about my sexuality for decades. Quill recalls Takei telling him, "You can't imagine what kind of century towers you can build around your heart." Takei came out in 2005 as a statement after Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger voted a bill legislating same-sex marriage in California. Quickly, he moved from the closet to the front of the Pride Paradise. "I was prepared that I wasn't going to have an acting career," he says. No, the opposite has happened, and I was more in demand," Takei says, almost in song. They loved gay George Takei. It was as though gay was an horrific and gay George Takei was a reboot. Star Trek. Okay. Then 7. The latter listening towards camp with its own community theater, props to tight tops and Shatner's Hamlet-like readings was a fitting combination. Takei was hired as much for his droll persona. His catchphrase, "Oh my," as his talent work was constant. He had appearances on the sitcoms The Big Bang Theory, in Will and Grace, and in Archie Comics as hero to Gay and Archie Comics. Plus, that surprising gig on Stern Show. That was a strategy after I came out, he says of Stern. We had reached the decent, fair-minded people, the LGBT audience. How Hard had a huge national audience. On Stern Show hired technically as the official announcer, but also as a routinely pranked foil. Takei surprised listeners by inverting his elegant persona, a man who rarely swears or raises his voice, by being as raunchy as the regular crew. Takei revealed more about his sex life than perhaps anyone anticipated. Mentions of Brad became a constant. Takei's once closeted life was broadcasted by master of all media, Sirius XM. 2007, former model Scar R. Brunton alleged that Takei drugged and drugged and sexually assaulted him in 1981. No charges were ever filed. Takei denies the incident, which was never substantiated. The actor says it's a fabrication of somebody who wanted to have a story to regale people with. Takei moved past it. It was a very upsetting experience, but it's never to come up again. His optimism buoyed him, and he had important causes to serve. The first time I met George Brad at a party in Los Angeles last year, they were bickering when we met in Manhattan. They bicker again over lunch over the smallest details. Brad worries about almost everything. George does not. It was somewhat refreshing, a cult icon and his spouse being themselves in front of a reporter. Takei's openness contributes to the continuing embrace by fans 5 decades after Star Trek was canceled, and why he's a natural for Stern. He presents authentically as himself, a man who extols life's fortunes. Why is he angry? Why isn't he angry with the country that imprisoned his family? Because it would be another barbed wire fence around my hurts, he says. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988 formally apologized to former Japanese American entities. Takei received a reparation check for $20,000. He donated it to the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles, which he helped found and for which he serves as a trustee. Takei has witnessed his country change, often for the better. When I was growing up, I couldn't marry a white woman, he has said, due to the miscegenation laws. And now I'm married to a white dude. In 2012, he was on the Celebrity Apprentice. He invited host Donald Trump to lunch at any of Trump's properties. Smart move with the intention of discussing marriage equality. Discussing American equality. Trump accepted the offer. Takei recalls that Trump told him he believed in traditional marriage between a man and a woman. This from a man who has been married 3 times. Takei was in New York recently for Pride Month, attending the Stonewall anniversary concert and City Hall ceremony. The events are as vital to his identity as acting. I was active in almost every other social justice cause, as well as political candidates, he says, but I was silent about the issue that was most personal to me, most organic to who I am, because I wanted my career. Time was generous. He began life in internment camps and came out in his late 60s. At 82, he's flourishing in a field that had little use for him when he started, but time can punish memory. Takei wants to ensure we know the story of what happened to his family and his country. The worst day of internment was the first one, he recalls. Soldiers marched up to the driveway with bayonets on their rifles, pounded the door, and took the family away. Who knew where and for how long? Who knew where and for how long, says Takei. It was a terrifying morning. Bayonets and a 5-year-old boy. It is, as Takei says, an American story, a frightening and lamentable one. All we can do is learn.